It's the Creek this week.
Creek Week.
Welcome to the video blog of Allen Creek Community Church, where we exist to be a safe place for spiritual but not religious people to become fully devoted followers of Christ. That's what we do around here, Dan.
We do everything that I want. We've determined that.
Well, actually, also what you want,
We're just going to do
and
what
you
Dan
want
wants.
is to talk about an article that you came up with, talking about spiritual but not religious people. The numbers are growing, Dan. The numbers are growing of
They are indeed, Bob. Now,
not religious.
Now off to the weather.
Does this sound like a pastoral commentary on the sporting event that is the religious life of America?
It is a bit.
Well, it looks like another one's left the church, Bob.
Oh, that one's going to hurt.
He's going fast.
Let's see that church
It
falling
looks like
apart.
he's flaming a lot of people as he leaves. He's leaving some skid marks at the door.
Oh, flag on that one.
Oh, boy.
That could go on for
You
a
know,
bit.
it really could, and we are making light of a very serious problem.
Which is what we do.
But I got some stuff to talk about at the end. Let's just talk about this survey, Dan, because you sent this out to the elders today, and I thought that it was worth talking about to all of you AC3 and your extended family and friends. This is a survey put out by PRRI.
Religious Research Institute.
Yes. And they give us reasons people gave for changing religious affiliation. So this is kind of analyzing the nuns phenomena. Dan, what is a nun?
A nun
N-O-N-E.
is someone who marks on whatever survey where it says, religion, none.
Okay, so that's what a nun is, not an N-U-N, woman in habit.
Right.
That is not a nun. Okay, so the reason the nuns gave for becoming nun are listed here and listed by percentage, okay? So I'm just going to read some of these percentages and the reasons, and I'm going to want to get your thoughts on this. So, number one reason why people change their religious affiliation, they stop believing in the religion's teaching, 56%. By the way, these add up to more than 100% because people are allowed to check more than one box, okay? 56%.
Yeah, that's a surprising number given because I think what we see in media and maybe anecdotally, we see a lot of division over politics and culture, and maybe not so much about doctrine in particular.
Right.
This will be revealed here, I think, later in the data. But at least for me, I was surprised to see that because I thought it would have been about, well, you vote red and I vote blue, or vice versa. And that sort of a thing seems to be
It's clearly there, but look, and we'll just go right to it. At the bottom of the list, congregation became too political, 17%.
Yeah, that's just absolutely flipped of what I thought it would be.
Okay, so negative religious teachings about this got to relate to the first one. Stop believing the religion's teaching. Negative religious teachings about or treatment of LGBTQ plus people. So that's teachings, so it's almost like that's got to marry the first one, which is stop believing their teachings, maybe for some people, among which was the church's stand on marriage and sexuality.
Right. Yeah, that's a subset, right, of the first one, in a way, but
maybe treatment is maybe treatment and not teaching is the issue there. So you could say, well, we continue to hold to a biblical model of heterosexual normativity, which on paper is sort of like, it doesn't have to be
hostile.
Exactly. Right, Thank you. Great word. But it could be. And then the treatment issue then becomes more significant than the teaching. It's like, you can have whatever view of marriage you want. I've got a much more open view of marriage, but it's the way you treat sexual minorities that really bugs me, and I can't abide. Bye-bye.
And that's interesting that the survey creators broke that out, because that tends to, I think it's one of those sorts of things where if you don't know how to make a survey, you're going to really skew your results.
Exactly. It does show
it's a complicated thing, having done research on it and finding out how I am not qualified to make a really good survey. Because you could, it's like saying, are you against violence? Yeah. Okay. Are you against armed robbery? Well, when you break it out, it's like, are you? This is a little skewed, but I think overall, when we take those two numbers there, where we take the LGBTQ question amongst religious teachings, it makes more sense to me.
Oh yeah.
That it's a higher number.
Yeah. Okay. And And it does show why sociology is the soft sciences. So,
yeah, right. Sheldon Cooper would say it's not science.
yes, exactly. So 29% said family was never that religious growing up. So that's fascinating. So I changed my religious affiliation because my family was not religious. This one didn't make sense to me.
It's kind of...
I'm irreligious, and now I changed my religious affiliation to what?
Maybe.
To more irreligiousness?
Maybe it's just that person who was raised in the church, but
it was nominal.
it was nominal. We
Okay.
just,
Got
my
it.
parents made me go to Sunday
That
school
makes
kind
a
of
lot
thing.
sense. And there's a lot of people. This is across the board.
That
but-
number would have been twice as high if we did the survey 30 years ago.
Okay.
Right, boomers, right? Boomer. This was
Yes,
a boomer experience.
yep,
that
that makes
my
sense.
parents made me go to church, and I hated it. And as soon as I got the chance to pull the ripcord, I did.
And I think we're finding also this is really a very interesting or pointed phenomenon amongst Catholics.
Yeah, and also I think mainstream Protestants too.
Yes,
So
yes, I've
Episcopal,
heard that too.
Methodist, and
Lutheran.
Lutherans. Yeah.
Scandals involving leaders in former religion, 27%,
Yeah.
and that one some people might just peg that one at the top, or if you ask them, and they might say it's the number one reason. Here it looks like the number 4, but still significant.
Yeah, I mean a quarter of people.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the one that it's how do you argue with that? I mean, there's an argument to be made, and I don't know that this is the place where we have the time to really get into the weeds about it, but that's the more understandable one for me personally.
Okay, it's so fascinating you say
I think
that.
it's because it's my personal
Because I just flip it. I go, that is understandable at the level of the emotions, but it's not to me as nearly as understandable at the level of the mind, because a scandal involving a church leader, there's an obvious intellectual disassociation I can make between this person's bad behavior and the truth of the religion. Now, I get it. That,
you
like,
can, but then I think there's also an argument to be. It really comes down to kind of how one's wired.
Yeah.
So I think you put it. I had an emotional response as a 19-year-old who encountered the fact that I was being lied to,
Yeah.
bald-faced lied to, by a church leader, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, this hurts. This scares me.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this entire realm that I'm stepping into is very scary to me, and I'm out.
Yeah.
So it was an emotional response.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
What doesn't make sense in the inverse is like they stop believing in their religion's teachings. And I would like to know what data was presented to you that changed. It's like, oh, well, these 2 pages in the Bible were stuck together. I didn't notice it said this here.
Yeah.
Or some new information came in.
Right.
To me, it's this interesting disconnect between intellect and our emotional, our attachments. And if my attachment to a community of people gets stretched and broken, that for me a lot more significant than if my doctrines or my intellectual propositions get stretched, or even some of them broken. If they all got broken, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if suddenly you come along and you say, gosh, man, we have to date the book of Philippians 30 years later. Oh, okay. Let me stop and evaluate the significance of that.
Right. Well, and that is interesting you say it like that, because it feels to me like some of the leavers, let's say those changing religious affiliation for reason 1, 60%, either are reacting to a version of the faith that's a straw manning issue. They're reacting to a version of the faith that really well-instructed Christians either didn't have or shouldn't have had. In other words, I'm just giving an example. They had a dictation model of inspiration. They believe that, Bible's facts from heaven. Like, it's just like Islam believes about the Quran. It's like, ding, it's perfect, and just bling, and there's no issue with manuscripts. There's no issue with progressive revelation. They have no concept of the nuance of that. Then they find that, wait a minute, there's a law about slavery. And if it was sort of like, bring facts from heaven, do all these things, and that's all it is. It's like dictation, from God's mouth to your ear. And they have no concept of the way the Bible is put together, the way an instructed Christian would know. And then they leave the faith for that. It's like, that's a straw man version of the faith. Why did you hold that? Well, we know why. Because in some circles, these sorts of questions aren't encouraged.
another kind of version of the straw man thing can be too. It's some subset outlier version of Christianity that gains media traction. And so you've got the Westboro Baptist Church. Now all of a sudden, because you have 20 people,
utterly disproportionate, time and attention.
20 people who are off the rails and do not represent a biblical worldview of how to love your neighbor at all. This is how uninformed people then say, and it goes to this thing. This is how they treat LGBTQ people. I don't believe in that teaching. Therefore, I reject the entire faith. And I think that happens a lot too.
I think so too.
And it's a straw man.
It is. And then to me, it's doubly tragic because some people may grow up in a stream or have experience with a Christian stream that doesn't do that or teach that, has more subtlety. But because the other stream you're talking about has the fame and the negative attention, in the culture or the political thing that we talk about, too political. They didn't experience it, but they saw that someone else did experience it. And in solidarity with them, they leave. It's like, where was your own? It's like, where was your own personal devotion to a more subtler faith? And why didn't you just hang on to that and broadcast that instead of leaving it in solidarity with a person who had a version of faith that was wooden, legalistic, fundamentalist? It seems to me like that's a bad reason, a terrible, a not well-instructed reason. But that remains for us then to just simply be people who hold out a well-instructed, more subtle version that is, I guess, harder to straw man and trust God with the results. Which, by the way, Dan, to just bring this to an end, the book that we unpacked after Easter, The Air We Breathe, the last chapter was fantastic, where the guy mentioned Jesus never had any anxiety about the success of his movement. And I thought that's a fantastic way to put it. Jesus had no anxiety about the success of his movement. Why should we if Jesus doesn't? So this can all be very concerning for us as we consider some of this stuff. But Jesus was like, this is going to be preached to all the nations. Like, what? There's 12 of us. So he's utterly confident in the success of his movement. What he was concerned for us to be concerned about is for us to walk out our strangeness, our devotion to Jesus in a hostile way, in a hostile environment.
As we say in some settings, blessed are the weird.
Yes. So let's embrace our
Let's
weirdness
be weird.
in C3 and trust God with the outcomes. Until next time. See you later.
Toodaloo.
And you can have a really weird beard like this.
This is
You're
not a
leaning on the
weird.
weirdness?
This is not weird. This is a super normal beard.
Okay.
This is what happens when I don't do anything.
That's good.
This is the epitome of normal.
So the guys
What you're doing there is bizarre.
Yeah.
You're trimming things up. And look at
Actually-
Mayhouse. He takes a piece of steel and scratches it on his face.
That is weird. Why?
That's weird.
Why would you do that?
This is normal.
So
Go away with your hygiene.
so weird.